Hey guys, this is Dennis, the founder of Think Hero.
And I'm David Griffin, your resident comic book and video game guru.
And this is our review of X-Men Days of Future Past, directed by Bryan Singer, who's come back to the franchise.
Yeah, he's back, thank goodness.
Well, there's a lot of high expectations for this movie, and I have to say, like, I was worried that, hey, I don't know, because from the trailers, I loved all the trailers that have been coming out, and I've been hearing all this stuff about how good it is, and it actually met my expectations.
Yeah, it did to me too. I mean, it's a big story. It's ambitious. I mean, you're combining Bryan Singer's cast with Matthew Vaughn's cast, and can they coexist? Can they work? And it worked.
Yeah, it definitely worked. This, I had to say, this is definitely for me the best X-Men film of the franchise, and for me, it's one of the best comic book films that I've seen.
I'd agree.
Ever.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, in the past year or whatever. I'm saying ever. I liked it better. People were asking.
You're going to get a lot of pushback from Christopher Nolan fans now.
I know.
A lot of pushback
well,
now.
no, I mean, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight ranks up there with me as well.
It's very good.
You know, you have Avengers, and I think the first Iron Man for me hold a special place in my heart. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm saying it's up there with the best. And with this one, it's kind of interesting because it is a superhero comic book film, but it has like a science fiction feel to it with the time travel. And I was kind of concerned that maybe it would get too messed up, too jumbled, and fall apart, but it didn't. It seemed really tight. What did you think?
No, I thought it held everything together. I think without going into spoilers yet, since most of the movie is spent in the past, it works. I think if you jump back and forth too much, that could cause some confusion. But I think they kept it focused. They brought in more characters. There are a lot more characters than we've seen in recent films, but it wasn't X-Men, The Last Stand, the third one that Brett Ratner did, where they just threw everybody in there and be like, here you go, here's everybody. I mean, they threw people in, but they didn't feel wasted. With a purpose.
With a purpose, yeah.
I guess we can talk about some of the characters we've seen in the beginning without spoiling anything from the trailers, right?
Yeah,
I think we can. So, I mean, the beginning, there's a lot of, you've seen the trailers, we got Sunspot, Iceman, a girl named Blink, and we got Colossus, of course. We have Bishop, played by Omar Sy. And Warpath is on there. And again, we don't really get a lot of character introduction with them. They're just kind of there doing their thing, but I thought all the scenes with them worked. I mean, they did enough. Their powers were cool. The choreography, I was going to see if you liked the choreography, that was really cool, especially with the stuff that Blink was doing. Yeah,
Blink's power was pretty cool. I mean, you see in the trailer as well, and they released a clip of her just being able to teleport people and how she was able to use that in both an offensive and defensive way. With offensive with other people's powers and helping out, and then defensive, like making sure people don't get hit.
And I'll say that after there's something she does. I'll say that for the spoiler section, but
we're gonna talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and then most of the bulk of this is actually gonna be the spoilers. But I liked Wolverine. I mean, I thought, people were complaining, okay, the original story was Shadowcat and Kitty Pryde, how come they have Wolverine? It's like, I'm sorry, they're not...
Hugh Jackman sells movie tickets.
Exactly. I mean, like, we had some misguided person who was complaining about our trailer review about how the reason why they don't use Shadowcat is because she's not old enough in the X-Men movie franchise, and that's why they don't use her. Nah, no,
this is all about. This is all money. This is all money.
Trust me, if Ellen Page and the character were introduced and was the same age as, let's say, Wolverine, still not going to do it.
No,
they're still not banking a $200 million movie franchise
on Ellen Page.
Who's
great, like Ellen Page.
She's great.
She's great. Yeah,
and she was good in this movie.
Yeah, she was great.
But they're not going to take that character and that actress and revolve it around her.
Right, they're not going to take a chance. I mean, they stuck to their guns. The movie posters, all Jennifer Lawrence and Hugh Jackman in the forefront. What's interesting to me, you might disagree, I don't know, I really thought when I left the film, I thought this was really James McAvoy's movie. Not to take it away from anybody else, there's a lot of characters, a lot of moving pieces, but James McAvoy and Jennifer Lawrence, when I left, stood out more than everybody else, even more than Hugh Jackman, I thought.
Well, because they are the heart of the story. The heart of the this story is about the young Professor X and the young Mystique and their relationship. And ultimately, we'll talk about it later, but ultimately that's what this whole story is kind of about. And the thing about it is McAvoy was fantastic. Fassbender, always great as
Yeah,
Magneto.
yeah.
But Jennifer Lawrence, I felt like finally kind of came into her own in terms of Mystique, not as an actress. She's obviously an amazing actress,
right?
She's
Yeah,
Oscar winning. I'm saying as Mystique. In First Class, I didn't feel so much.
Right.
Like her being, she was more Raven.
Right. She's more in replacing Rebecca Romaine. It's like you kind of missed her almost a little bit.
Yes, but in this one, you really got Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique.
Yeah.
Like you felt like, okay, that's the Mystique that we know.
Right. Yeah, she was good. I mean, the other person, of course, talk about Game of Thrones here every week. Peter Dinklage was great as Trask. I mean, he was Bolivar Trask. I thought he did a great job too. I mean, he. You see him. He wasn't Tyrion. He was doing his thing. He's a good actor. He has range. He can do a lot of different things, and I thought he was great.
Mm-hmm.
He was good
and then
too.
the action in general. I think the thing that I like about this movie so much, and why I'm ranking it so high amongst the comic book movies and higher than, let's say, something like a Captain America 2, because people are asking me like, is it better than Captain America 2? And I know some people who really like Captain America 2, and I did too.
Yeah, it's very good.
But this, to me, is on another level. It's not. It's weird. I can say it's not even close, even though I still really like Captain America 2.
Right, I know what you mean.
But X-Men, the story is better, and not only the story, the characters, I care about them more.
Yeah.
Where Captain America 2 was a lot of fun and
it
had
was
like
fun.
cool stuff that worked within the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
This was like, oh man, like I felt like really involved with what was going on. Like you were saying with James McAvoy, like man, like he delivered a great performance.
I feel like the Fox Marvel franchise, as opposed to the Disney Marvel Studios franchise, I feel like they let their actors do a little bit more. I'll exclude, of course, Robert Downey Jr., who I think just owns that role as Iron Man. Like Chris Hemsworth, as good as he is as Thor, I think he's a good actor. He's just kind of always going to be that character. That's just all he's going to be. But I feel like Singer and Vaughn, who the story was based off of, Matthew Vaughn's story, they kind of like let their actors almost do indie film stuff, like the way they act and their emotion. I feel like you can get more emotionally involved in the characters from the Fox franchise as opposed to, I mean, the Disney franchise is great. It's always fun. You're laughing. You're having a great time. But I feel like you get some more dramatic performances in Bryan Singer's film. And I kind of, that's why I said I think I agree with you that it pulled me in emotionally to the characters more than I have in a Marvel studio. So aside from Iron Man 1 possibly.
Yeah, and I'll say something maybe controversial to some of the hardcore comic fans. This movie is better than the comic book version of Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
I know Days of Future Past is one of the best X-Men stories, but I think some people over glorify it in the sense of people forget it was like maybe a 2 or 3 issue arc in X-Men. It was not very long, and it was good. It was a great concept, but they did not get this in depth and detail.
No.
The emotions that this movie has were not. It's not as much in the comic book. I think some people maybe just be like have rose-tinted glasses because it is a classic.
It's classic. I mean, it's up there with the Dark Phoenix saga. I mean, it's which obviously X-Men 3 ruined. Brian Ratner ruined, but it is better. I started reading the new one. I got into comics, even though I know my introduction is comic book guru and all that. I got into reading comics later, not until the 2000s. So I came in after Frank Miller, after Alan Moore. When I go back to read the really old comics, it's sometimes hard for me to get into because the writing is different. I mean, it's just the Silver Agey, stuff.
It's a lot of
thought
bubbles.
I am thinking blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Even in the 90s, if you read Age of Apocalypse, you'll see like it's a lot of exposition in thought bubbles that you don't necessarily need.
Right, and now comics are almost written like storyboards.
Yes.
A lot of art, which I like to see the art kind of explain what's going on. I don't want everything described for me. So I felt like this movie had more freedom than even the comic book did. Even though the comic book is a classic, it's considered a classic, it is. I enjoyed this more than the comic book myself.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, I'm going to touch on some minor negative things. Let me get this
straight.
Wrong,
nothing wrong.
Let me get this straight before people go freak out. These are minor things that didn't really bother me. They were just little like, oh, I wish they could have done this, but it doesn't bother me, so don't go crazy. Anyways, so the minor things were, I would have liked to see more future scenes.
Yeah.
The future, I'd like to see more of like kind of, remember in the beginning they showed that, well, I don't want to spoil it. I'll talk about it in this question.
Right,
but I wish there was more. to show the kind of the destruction and impact of the Sentinels across the world. I mean, we got some of it.
Right.
I wish there was more.
No, you're right, because it was just basically open shots of like a city, and like here's a city destroyed already.
And it was mainly focused on the X-Men characters that were there versus the entire world. So that was a minor thing. With Peter Dinklage and Trask, Bolivar Trask, I thought he did a good job with it. I wish there was more backstory to him.
We don't know his motivation.
And motivation,
right,
exactly.
Yeah, right.
They gave a little bit, but I wish there was more.
Right.
Still minor. And then there's another thing. Maybe I'll talk about this more in the spoiler section, but there's like a Professor X drug kind of metaphor going on that I didn't really care for because it was a bit on the nose. But
too much. Okay, I understand.
These are minor things. Didn't bother me that much.
Right. I was gonna say I agree with you on the your thought about the future. Like I said in the beginning, even though you see Sunspot and Warpath, all these characters, it doesn't hurt that you don't know them. But when you, as a comic book fan, when you throw Bishop up in there, I want to know what's up with Bishop. Like, I just don't want to see. I mean, he was cool. Omar Sy did a good job, but he didn't get to do anything. He was just there, and I wanted to know more about Bishop and what he's up to, and and Sunspot. And it was great to see Bobby, Iceman. You seen the trailer, like do his thing and ice out and do all that. Like, I did want to see more of that. But I think. I don't know if they would have been able to balance all of it together, but I'm glad that we did get to see some of it. But I agree with you. We should have seen more.
Okay. Any other minor negative things? Because you and me seem to be on the same page on how much we like the movie.
Everything else I thought was pretty good. Okay. I don't know. So with Beast, his look is just a little. I don't know. I just don't know if I like it. I think it works better in the comics. I think it works better in the X-Men animated series that was out in the 90s. But I love.
It's hard to do visually.
It's hard to do, but the actor does a great job.
Nicholas Hoult.
Nicholas Holt's great. Yeah. He's a great actor. He does a great. And it's nice, well, there's some stuff we'll get to in the spoiler section later. I almost slipped there for a second, but I mean, it's just Beast look. But other than that, again, we're just nitpicking. This movie I thought was great.
Okay, so let's give our overall thoughts and grades, and then we'll get to the spoiler section. Which this review will have lots of spoiler section stuff because there's so much to go over. Right. So overall, one of my favorite comic book movies ever. Definitely the best X-Men movie. It's a great story. The characters I was involved with, and I felt like that was one of the main things that brought it up for me over other comic book films where I don't feel something for the characters. It's entertaining and fun or whatnot, but this one I actually cared what was going to happen to them.
Right.
And minor things aside, I do recommend seeing it in 3D. I saw it both in 3D IMAX and I saw it in 2D, and there were certain scenes we'll talk about in the spoiler section that were better in 3D.
Yeah.
They
were.
What
you're talking about,
I know some people hate on 3D. I'm not a hater of 3D. I think when it is used effectively, it works. And this is a movie that uses it effectively. So I recommend seeing it on the biggest screen as possible with the best sound and with 3D. And this is one of those movies that I don't think you should wait to see on Blu-ray or DVD. I think this you'll get the payoff of seeing it in the theater. What about you?
I agree. I think I would see this.
You're
great. Yeah, give your grade. Yeah.
I'm going to give it. It's tough because I'm teetering between A and A minus. It's like for me, it's like in between the A and A minus. But you know what? I'm going to give it an A.
All right, nice.
I've seen it twice already. I'm probably going to see another couple times.
Right. No, I agree. Like I said, I know we're agreeing on a lot of things here. I really enjoyed it. For me, it's going to be, I think, an A minus.
Okay.
I was trying to rank it, and rankings change. Every time you see a movie, every time you revisit a movie after years, I'm sure my rankings, they're always in flux. But for right now, I was thinking, maybe I'm feeling I like Dark Knight, 1, Avengers 2, maybe this for me 3. Yeah. This for me 3, but that could change. Who knows? I mean, I need to watch Avengers again. It's been a while since I've seen that, or Dark Knight. But I liked it. It was fun. The minor, qualms I have with it don't affect the story. I don't care that it's not exactly like the comic book. If it's more Hugh Jackman based, hey, Hugh Jackman's great in the role. He looks great. He's more popular. That's fine. But I really liked it. Definitely an A minus. Definitely a must see.
Oh, definitely and we forgot to mention there's a lot of funny moments throughout this movie.
Oh yeah, great. A lot of nudges to fans.
Exactly.
But it's not nudges that if you don't get it, it's not that big of a deal. It's not going to ruin the movie for you.
No. All right, guys. So that's our overall thoughts and our grades. So we're gonna get into the spoiler section now. Well, let's start off with Wolverine. How funny was that one scene where they called back to first class about when Professor X went to go look for mutants to join his cause, and Wolverine told him to fuck off, and then now Professor X brought it back.
Which is great, because this is a PG-13 movie. PG-13 movies, you get one F word that you can say, and they dropped it.
Which first class used that with Wolverine, and then this time it was for McAvoy.
Yeah, they dropped it. It was great. That was hilarious. There's so many kickback, and then, I mean, this is a dumb thing, but I don't think you'd ever see this in a Disney Marvel movie unless they did like Punisher or something. Although it's kind of funny that we saw Hugh Jackman's butt. I didn't see that coming. Like, I mean, it's PG-13, but this isn't like Titanic or like some movie romance. I mean, I know it's for the ladies, but it was just kind of funny seeing that. Like, I don't think we'd see that in a Disney Marvel movie.
Or the fuck. I don't think.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't do that. No.
Even though Marvel movies are PG-13, they're not going to drop the F-bomb.
No. Well, that's why I said I think Singers and Matthew Vaughn's have a little more of an edge to it.
Exactly.
Some other, I guess other scenes that were great. One of the cool scenes that I've seen in a superhero movie, I guess the Quicksilver.
Yes.
Maximoff, Peter Maximoff. That was great.
Let's talk about that, because obviously I've been very critical of the look of Quicksilver.
Oh, it's still corny.
It still looks cheesy.
It's still cheesy, yeah.
However, he does have some of the best scenes in the movie, and that one scene is, I think you need to see in 3D. The one where they freeze everything. Well, practically freeze.
Time in a bottle, music playing in his headphones. Yeah.
That scene was really cool, and I saw it in both 2D and 3D, and it was way better in 3D.
Yeah.
You feel I guess the dimensions of where everyone's at, and all the objects, and when they're slowing down and him moving them around.
Right.
That was an awesome scene, and it was funny too.
And it's cool, and it's good to see Evan Peters. I mean, coming from American Horror Story, which he's been good at, to doing some big screen stuff. I mean, he was just good in that. I mean, he stole every scene he was in. I mean, even when Fassbender and McAvoy, Professor X and Magneto are reunited, and he gets McAvoy punches Fassbender in the face. Even that wasn't as cool as seeing what Quicksilver was doing. And I was so sad. He was only in it for like a few minutes, then he was gone. He was so good. And then, of course, the nudge to like, hey, you can bend metal, work with metal. My mom knew a guy like that. It's like, he's like, oh, and then I know we were discussing the origins, but I mean, his sister has red hair. Now you said it's possibly some different.
I had mentioned before I thought it was Scarlet Witch, but now, like reading what people have been saying, they say, oh no, they think it's Polaris and that Scarlet Witch is referenced in that scene, but not shown.
And the thing is, who knows if Matthew Vaughn Bryan Singer, these guys, or Matthew Vaughn, if he's still part of the project, will ever use those characters again. I mean, Scarlet Witch or Polaris, but it's a cool little nudge to the fans. It's a cool nudge.
Exactly. And speaking of when we're talking about the future scenes, now that we can talk about in the spoilers thing, how cool was it that they were able to like kill them?
Yeah.
Like, I know, like, they weren't really
few
dead,
times. Like twice.
but it was pretty gruesome for PG-13, They ripped apart Colossus.
Oh, that was rough, yeah.
They took Warpath and put his head in, like, burned it off and everything.
Yeah.
Like, it was pretty brutal.
It pushed the PG-13 limit, and it did a good job with it. I mean, and two, I don't know if you ever played the video game Portal, where you shoot the gun, and I loved Blink did this thing where she propelled Colossus by gaining momentum, so she would throw something, a portal, he would jump through it, and then she would do another portal, and he would get momentum, and then knock over a Sentinel. So I thought that was a great scene too. That was really cool. Great choreography.
Yeah. And speaking of Sentinels, another thing that was that I really liked is the tie-in with Mystique, because when we saw the trailers, we're like, why do they look like that?
Right.
And why do they have these weird powers? Right. And now we know, story-wise, that they take Mystique's power and they integrate it into the future Sentinels, and I like that. And they made Mystique such a big part of this story.
Right.
We were talking about earlier, oh, this is James McAvoy, Mystique. It's kind of like a young Professor X, young Magneto, and Mystique storyline. Even though Hugh Jackman is the quote-unquote main character.
Hugh Jackman's almost like, if this were a novel, he would be the narrator. He's there doing work, and he's doing stuff. There's some interesting things, talk about like, William Stryker and all that stuff. But I mean, he's more just like moving the pieces, observing, kind of, he's overseeing everything. But McAvoy, I think, delivers the standout performance. Him and Jennifer Lawrence, I think they're just so impressive.
I think him and Fassbender.
Fassbender's always good.
That scene with them on the airplane when Fassbender goes, he's like, you abandoned us. Like, that scene was very emotionally powerful. And I think those two together. I mean, that's what the best part about X-Men is that relationship between Professor X and Magneto, the past and the future. You know, we see Patrick Stewart with Ian McKellen and how they're friends. I like seeing those scenes too, how they're now friends and working together. And it's just, I think that relationship is really the crux of X-Men.
Right, and another great scene with McAvoy was the Cerebro scene, where he, you know, just loses it. He can't focus, you know, there's so much like pain and screaming. And then I love the fact that Wolverine, you know, kind of, you know, lets him go his mind and talk. That conversation between him and Patrick Stewart himself, yeah, basically Charles talking together was that was one of the best scenes.
Yeah, especially because that scene could have been so cheesy. Oh, it could have been really cheesy.
They could have done the whole like, wait, I look like that, like why am I bald? You know, that kind of thing.
But the way Bryan Singer did it, both visually and the way that the performances he got from them was serious. I mean, that's the thing. This movie could have easily been terrible or cheesy, because if the actors don't buy into these roles and into the story, like forget it. Then we're like, oh, okay, who cares? Right.
I mean, it's that's the thing with the cast. I like Game of Thrones. You know, there's no Game of Thrones this week, so we can talk about X-Men. The cast, everybody's good. I mean, for the most part, everybody's good. Even like it was nice seeing. I know we're bouncing around here a lot, but it was even at the end of the movie, it was great seeing Anna Paquin. You know, I don't watch True Blood anymore, but I like Anna Paquin. I think she was good as Rogue. I liked her. It was nice seeing her again. It was great seeing Kelsey Grammer as Beast, even though that was in the last movie. But still, it was nice seeing him. It was just nice. It just worked. It didn't feel overcrowded, which I think it could have easily felt overcrowded and never did.
Of course. And then speaking of that Rogue scene is like the whole reset. That was cool. Basically,
alternate timeline?
Yeah, basically Bryan Singer took everything and said, okay, you know what? We're going to start over from scratch.
They basically X'd out X-Men 3.
Yeah.
He's like, Brett Ratner, you're out. You're done.
And probably parts of Wolverine Origins as well. Like, who knows? You know, there are some, people are going to complain. There are some continuity errors in terms of ages of characters and when certain things happen. But the reason why I give this movie a pass on that is that I think it was messed up through other movies, and that Bryan Singer had to kind of take some of the stuff that happened and use it, and then others he just had to throw away, because otherwise they wouldn't been able to make the movie. And so that's why I give some of those things a pass.
My only thing, and this is a small, again, nitpicking thing, movie's great. Seeing the end with everybody back, seeing Halle Berry, and it's like, it's good, but man, they're getting old. And don't get me wrong, Hugh Jackman looks great. The dude is 3 times the size he was back in 2001, 2002. He looks great. Femke Janssen still looks good she's got to be in her mid-40s. For a 40-year-old woman, still looks beautiful. But it's like, I wish they had I'd love to see Lupita, you know, from 12 Years a Slave, be Storm. I mean, she is African. She has the look. She has the mohawk. I mean, she would be great 80s Storm. Like, I'm just getting tired of seeing Halle Berry. Halle Berry's a beautiful woman. I like Halle Berry. But I'm just tired of seeing her. I want to see a younger cast. But I mean, Hugh Jackman's just so popular. But they're getting like in their mid-40s to 50s now. And I just wish they could start over, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and in that end sequence, you have this nice glow over everything, you know, to make it look old and make the people look younger. And how great was that scene at the end when Wolverine was like reaching his hand up to Jean Grey's cheek, and then Cyclops comes in and stops him.
That was great. It was great to see, is it Marsden?
James Marsden.
Marsden, so I say his name. Yeah, he's good. I missed him. I mean, I was sad when they killed him off. You know, the original.
They didn't really kill him off in X3. He disappeared.
Disappeared, and now he's back, which is good. So it's nice to see him. I really liked him.
That was a great way to like have him come back.
Yeah, he was great, because wasn't he like was he the boyfriend in the Superman movie that Bryan Singer did as well? Wasn't he like he was either that or he was Spider-Man 3? I can't remember. He was in one of those movies. But I mean, he's done some superhero stuff before outside of X-Men, and I missed him. He's a good actor. He's still getting work, but I'm glad that he's back. He's good. Okay. He's good.
And let's talk about the end credits sequence. You know, I don't know. I'm pretty sure. If you're comic book fans and you read a lot of X-Men, you know what the end credits sequence was, but a lot of people don't. I mean, the vast majority of movie-going audience isn't going to know what that is.
Yeah, over 95% of people.
Yeah,
don't know that,
I'd say even more than
Probably
that.
More
you know,
than that,
but let's talk about that. The apocalypse in Sabanor. Like basically, we get to see him when he was younger.
Yeah.
I think En Sabanor means the first one. He's like the first mutant ever.
Right.
So that's what that sequence was. If you don't know who it is, it's basically Apocalypse before he was Apocalypse.
Right. He's not jacked and doesn't have all the armor quite yet, but he's just a kid. You can see him forming the pyramids.
Yes.
You see the Four Horsemen, who are characters that change over time.
Yes.
I mean, I know he uses like Mr. Sinister has been a Four Horseman in the past. I mean, who knows what that's going to represent?
Archangel has been. I think Jean Grey has been. It's death, pestilence, war, and famine. Those are the Four Horsemen.
I mean, a lot of people were already speculating that maybe he'll use Magneto as one of them. Who knows? I mean, who knows what we'll see in the X-Men Apocalypse? But as comic book stuff, if you're looking for something to read, of course there is the Age of Apocalypse collection you can read. Rick Remender also wrote a new story about 2 years ago or so, an X-Force, Uncanny X-Force, with a young Apocalypse reborn. And that was a really good story, too. So there's some good Apocalypse stories if you want to read up on that.
I don't think they're going to do the Age of Apocalypse storyline because that's an alternate timeline. And the way things kind of ended on this X-Men Days of Future Past does not lend itself to.
So maybe they'll take some of the newer stories or something.
Yeah, because Age of Apocalypse has like a whole thing where like Mr. Sinister adopts Cyclops and Havoc, and it's totally different. So I think they are going to have Apocalypse.
There's talk of Jennifer Lawrence, Mystique getting her own spin-off. I mean, she's so big with the Hunger Games now, and that franchise is on its way wrapping up eventually. So I mean, maybe. She could stay on board, of course, I guess. She could stay on board. But yeah, it would be interesting to see how that's going to work out and how they're going to change the Wolverine story. Like if that's going to change because, we see she's Stryker. Yeah. I don't think that's part of the old, so I'm going to be curious to see how that changes things with Wolverine.
Well, pretty much this movie said, forget all those forget X-Men 3, forget Wolverine Origins. Those didn't happen. This is the new storyline now.
The storyline, yeah. I'm happy we got to see. This was great.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that we forgot here?
I think we got most. I mean, there's a lot, but I think we got a lot of it. We got
a lot of. I'm sure people are gonna be like, oh, you guys forgot this part or this part, and I'm sure we did. But overall, I really liked it. I love this movie. I think it's one of the best comic book movies I've ever seen. It's not the best, but I think it's up there. And so I definitely recommend seeing it. What about you?
Like I said, I recommend seeing it. It's one of my favorites. Like I said, right now it's in my top 3 or 4 comic book movies of all time. Like I said, that could change, but I love it. I'd say go see it, support this, and I can't wait to see X-Men Apocalypse.
Okay. All right, guys, you can post your comments below on our website, thinkhero.com, or on our YouTube channel, Think Hero Pro. Make sure to subscribe to that.
You can also come find us on Twitter. Dennis and myself are at Think Hero. We're going to chat with us on all things X-Men, everything you saw, you liked, you didn't like, let us know. I'm also at GriffinDE.
And we have also a Facebook page. That's facebook.com/ThinkHeroFans. Make sure you like that page and share our videos on Twitter and Facebook and all that other stuff.